And so now, in the midst of the rise of Turkey, in the midst of the rise of the Persian Empire, and in the midst of Iran being such a threat to the point that Iran bombed Israel for days, and in the midst of the American population just losing interest in Israel or just being antagonistic towards Israel, in the midst of the Tuckerite faction destroying the Cruzite faction and vanquishing the Cruzite faction in the metapolitical sphere of debate, Israel decides to screw itself over once again and piss off the Americans.
They don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Even a president as pro-Israel as Donald Trump admitted that Israel has violated a ceasefire. Here is yet another example of the Israelis screwing themselves over. Their arrogance will lead to their demise. But what I am saying is that that big F-bomb is bigger than the freaking bunker busters that Trump dropped on Iran. All right, everyone, so let's talk about Donald Trump saying that Israel has violated the ceasefire and that Israel does not know what the F it's doing.
Israel says that Iran violated the peace agreement and the ceasefire agreement. Do you believe that Iran is still committed to peace?
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed to
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
This is a surreal, unprecedented moment in the history of the American-Israeli alliance. For the first time in the history of this alliance between the US and Israel, we have an American president saying that Israel has violated a ceasefire. We are so used to seeing American administrations making it out as if Israel is the hero in every situation, that Israel can do no wrong. We are so used to seeing presidents being super pro-Israel, and now for the first time ever, we are seeing Donald Trump, who has been very pro-Israel, who has been very supportive of Israel, saying Israel has violated a ceasefire. This has set a precedent. This has set a standard that will be used by critics of Israel for years to come. You are going to be seeing people like Dave Smith, Bassem Youssef, and the like saying things like, even a president as pro-Israel as Donald Trump admitted that Israel has violated a ceasefire, and they are going to be quoting the F-bomb. They are going to be quoting the big F-bomb that was dropped by Donald Trump. Israel doesn't know what the F it's doing. And so Israel has pissed off the Americans because the Americans like being in control. America is an empire. And like any empire in history, America likes to be in control. And when you defy the American empire, you are going to get the ire of the American empire. And you could see Donald Trump was exhausted. He was fatigued. He was drained. You could see it. Listen, I am something of an insomniac myself. I can tell when someone has been sleep deprived. And that man looked exhausted. And he was talking to reporters and he said, listen, I'm going to try to fix this whole tension between Iran and Israel. And somebody brought up the Israelis saying that they're going to strike Iran and that the Iranians broke the ceasefire, blah, blah, blah. And Donald Trump said, listen, we are dealing with people who have been fighting for so long and so hard they don't know what the F they're doing. And he was talking about the Israelis and the Iranians, and the hospitalists are going to say, well, he also said that Iran violated the ceasefire as well, but he was especially pissed off at the Israelis. He did speak about the Iranians, yes, that's true, but he also spoke very negatively about the Israelis, and this is what makes the big F-bomb so unprecedented. And this is going to be used for years to come in the future. This is going to be used for years in the future by critics of Israel. The Israelis have pissed off the Americans. Now, the Israelis have pissed off the Americans because the Israelis are very arrogant. Israel is a very arrogant country, and in their minds, they can do whatever the hell they want because in their warped way of thinking, America will never stop us, so we can do whatever the hell we want. And I understand as to why they feel this way to a certain extent, because America has been so permissive for Israel, because America has been giving the green light for so long to Israel to do what it wants. So of course Israel is going to have this impression. There is a video of Netanyahu from years and years ago saying, listen, he's basically saying, I have America in my pocket.
אנחנו הולכים למסלול התנגשות עם הממשל האמריקאי. ארצות הברית זה לא מקשה אחת, זה לא מקשה אחת. יש את הסנאט, יש את הקונגרס, יש את הכוח היהודי שהוא עצום, יותר חזק משהיה אי פעם. יש דעת קהל, יש לנו כוחות כבירים בדעת הקהל שמתנגדים למדיניות הזאת, גדולי הפרשנים. אמריקה לא תכפה עלינו דבר, אם לא...
The Americans will listen to us because the Americans have this way of thinking that acquiesces to Israel, and there is a very strong lobby, and so I can get the Americans to do what I want. There is a video of Netanyahu pretty much saying this. So this is the mentality that America is dealing with. And so the Israelis think we can do whatever we want. Even if there is a ceasefire, we can violate it. Who really cares? Because we did see Israel break the ceasefire with Hamas recently. So because the Israelis are so arrogant, eventually they're going to piss off the Americans. And Donald Trump does not want to look weak. Donald Trump wants to look like he's the one in control over Israel, not the other way around. So this is not good for Donald Trump. So of course he's going to be upset. So the Israelis have pissed off the Americans. Why is this? Well, because of their arrogance. Israel has a history of doing things and pushing for things that eventually will pave the way to its own demise. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, you had the very strong Israel lobby back in the late 1990s and in the early 2000s pushing for the invasion of Iraq. And what did that lead to? It led to the rise of Iran. So the Israelis, people like Netanyahu, people like Shimon Peres, Ariel Sharon, they were pushing for the war in Iraq. The Israelis were. They were pushing for the U.S. to invade Iraq. And they were saying, go, America, go. And they were using the Christian evangelicals and saying, yes, Christian evangelicals, you are on the right side of history because you revere Israel and you have this position, this religious position that is extremely pro-Israel. Yes, you guys are right. Your theology is right. Your interpretation of the verse that says, I will bless those who bless you and I will curse those who curse you is correct. That is talking about the actual modern day state of Israel. You guys are on the right track. And they were pushing for war. They were hitting the war drums. They were blowing the horn of war. And they were pushing for the Iraq war. Well, the Americans did what the Israelis wanted. They overthrew Saddam Hussein. Ariel Sharon said something like, oh, Saddam Hussein is more dangerous than Iran. So Saddam Hussein got toppled, and then what happened? Iran rose up. Why is this? Well, it's very simple, because Saddam Hussein was a Sunni, the Iranians are Shiites, and so there was this war and tension and rivalry between the two sects of Islam. Saddam Hussein was keeping the Shiite Iranians in check, and by removing Saddam, they enabled, the Americans and the Israelis enabled the rise of Iran. And then the Israelis said, oh my God, Iran has risen. Yes, Iran has risen thanks to the Americans doing what you guys were asking for. So they got what they were asking for. They were not satisfied. They were terrified, upset, all this stuff. And since the early 2000s, they have been complaining about the Iranians. So, fast forward to the Obama administration, and the American government was saying, listen, we really don't want to have a direct war with Iran. The Israeli government was trying to push the Obama administration into war with Iran. This was something that the vast majority of Americans did not want and still do not want. But the Israelis have been pushing for the horn of war, and they've been blowing the horn of war. They've been pushing for war. And so you had the rise of the Shiite triangle. So the Israelis were pushing for the toppling of Bashar al-Assad. The American government under Obama was supporting an insurgency and a revolution to topple Bashar al-Assad. And this was something that the Israelis wanted. The Israelis were also backing Syrian rebels. And eventually, this year, Bashar al-Assad was toppled. Netanyahu does a victory speech talking about how he contributed to the fall of Bashar al-Assad.
This is a historic day for the Middle East. The collapse of the Assad regime, the tyranny in Damascus, offers great opportunity, but also is fraught with significant dangers. This collapse is a direct result of our forceful action against Hezbollah and Iran, Assad's main supporters.
Bashar al-Assad fled to Russia. Israel was boasting about how it was involved in this. And then guess what happened? Turkey rose up. And now Turkey is accelerating its production of ballistic missiles. Here is yet another example of the Israelis screwing themselves over. Their arrogance will lead to their demise. They thought, well, we have the Americans in our pockets. They will do what we want them to do. We've been pushing for the Iraq war. They're going to do it. The Americans did it. And the Israelis said, look, the Americans are going to be on our side no matter what, because the Christian Zionists are such a huge faction in American society. And as long as that Christian Zionism is there, we have the Americans in our pockets. As long as there is this strong sense of being pro-Israel and Zionistic, doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat, the Israelis knew that the Americans would support Israel. So they started pushing for the toppling of Assad. That happened, and then guess what happened? You had the rise of Turkey. So they got the toppling of Saddam Hussein. That led to the rise of Iran. The Israelis got terrified. And then there was the rise of the Shiite triangle. And so they were pushing for the toppling of Iran's ally, Bashar al-Assad. And so they got that, and then that has led to the rise of Turkey, and now you have Turkey smack right next to Israel in Syria, and the Israelis are now terrified of the Turks, just like they were terrified of Saddam, and now they're terrified of the Iranians, and now they're terrified of the Turks. But all of these monsters, for the most part, rose up thanks to the Americans doing what Israel wanted. Now, with the exception of Saddam Hussein, the rise of Iran was a monster that rose up thanks to the Americans doing what Israel wanted. The rise of Turkey is a monster. It is a Leviathan, a Frankenstein that has arisen thanks to the Americans doing what Israel wanted, which was the toppling of Bashar al-Assad. But the Israelis are very arrogant. For too damn long, they have thought the Americans will do what we want. So we told them to overthrow Saddam, they listened. We told them to overthrow Assad, they listened. So look at how much power we have. And the Americans can tell us what to do. We don't have to listen because we have so much power, because there is such a strong Israel lobby in America that we are always going to be exempt from America's ire and frustration. So we can piss off the Americans, we can ignore what the Americans ask for, we can just give the Americans a big fat middle finger. And the Americans will always be our sycophants, because the Americans have a strong Israel sentiment and there is a strong pro-Israel lobby. Well, guess what, Israel? You have pissed off the Americans at the worst freaking time. At the worst time that you could piss off the Americans, you have pissed off the Americans, because you have pissed off the Americans in the midst of the Tuckerite political faction dominating American political discourse. The Tuckerites being named after Tucker Carlson. You have this Tucker Carlson guy who is extremely critical of Israel. He is tired of America's excessive support for Israel. He is tired of Christian Zionism. He freaking destroyed Ted Cruz in a debate, and Ted Cruz is one of Israel's biggest fans. He is definitely a massive freaking sycophant for Israel, because, you know, the Bible told him so. The Bible has demanded that he be a sycophant. And you have this Tucker Carlson guy confronting Ted Cruz saying, hey, do you know that Israel spies on us? And Ted Cruz says, oh yeah, I know. Yeah, they're spying on us. And Tucker Carlson looks at Ted Cruz and says, do you like it? Do you like being spied on?
Does Mossad share all of its intelligence with us?
Oh, probably not, but they share a lot. Really? We don't share all of our intelligence with them, but we share a lot. It's a close alliance.
Do they spy domestically in the United States?
Oh, they probably do, and we do as well. And friends and allies spy on each other. And I assume all of our allies spy on us.
And that's okay with you?
You know what? One of the things about being a conservative is that you're not naive and utopian. As a conservative, I assume people act in their rational self-interest.
So it's conservative to pay people to spy on you?
It's conservative to recognize that human beings act in their own self-interest, and every one of our friends spies on us, And I'm not.
Do you like it?
And of course, Ted Cruz never denounces the spying, never says that he doesn't like it. He just says we have to support Israel like a freaking robot. And people are disgusted by Ted Cruz, and they are supporting, in massive numbers, Tucker Carlson. Why? Because pro-Israel sentiment is dying out, and the Zionist faction in the United States, be it secular or Christian, is an endangered species. That is why. Look at any debate between people like Dave Smith and any Hosperus or Zionist. Look at any debate between a Hosperus, and for those of you who don't know, a Hosperus is an Israeli propagandist or a propagandist for Israel. Look at any debate between a Hosperus and someone who is critical of Israel or pro-Palestine, and read the comments. You will see overwhelmingly the comment sections for these debates, generally speaking, are dominated by people who are critical of Israel. The fact that John Mearsheimer's book, The Israel Lobby, sold so well, and so many people have read this book and have loved this book, and I myself included, all of these facts are indications that the pro-Israel world in America is dying. So if you go back to that video of Netanyahu saying, oh, there's a big, massive pro-Israel lobby in America, so America's going to do what we want, that way of thinking has paved the path towards Israel's own demise. Israel demanded for the toppling of Saddam, it got it. That led to the rise of Iran. Israel asked for the toppling of Assad, it got it. That has led to the rise of Turkey. And so now, in the midst of the rise of Turkey, in the midst of the rise of the Persian Empire, and in the midst of Iran being such a threat to the point that Iran bombed Israel for days, and in the midst of the American population just losing interest in Israel or just being antagonistic towards Israel, in the midst of the Tuckerite faction destroying the Cruzite faction and vanquishing the Cruzite faction in the metapolitical sphere of debate, Israel decides to screw itself over once again and piss off the Americans. The arrogance of Israel is paving the path towards its own destruction. Bottom freaking line. And it's not just about the bombing of Gaza. A lot of people are pissed off at Israel because of its slaughter of the Palestinians, which is awful and terrible and nightmarish. I mean, you have a doctor saying that he was in Gaza and he was giving medical treatment to Gazans, and he said, I saw so many children with bullets. He said you could see a child with a bullet in his head, bullet in his neck. He said these were not accidents. These were deliberate shootings of children.
You're saying that children in Gaza are being shot by snipers?
Definitively. I have 2 children that I have photographs of that were shot so perfectly in the chest I couldn't put my stethoscope over their heart more accurately, and directly on the side of the head in the same child. No toddler gets shot twice by mistake by the world's best sniper. And they're dead center shots. All of the disasters I've seen combined, 40 mission trips, 30 years, ground zero, earthquakes, all of that combined doesn't equal the level of carnage that I saw against civilians in just my first week in Gaza.
And when you say civilians, is it mostly children?
Almost exclusively children. I've never seen that before. Never seen that. I've seen more incinerated children than I've ever seen in my entire life combined. I've seen more shredded children in just the first week.
Shredded?
Shredded.
What do you mean?
Missing body parts, being crushed by buildings, the greatest majority, or bomb explosions, the next greatest majority. We've taken shrapnel as big as my thumb out of 8-year-olds, and then there's sniper bullets. I have children that were shot twice.
And you see this sort of thing, and people are seeing this sort of thing, and they're saying, what the hell, Israel? We supported you. We were told that you were the most moral army in the world. We were told that you guys were moral and principled and all this stuff, and you guys have lied to us. Look at what you're doing. And so people have become disillusioned with Israel, but it's not just about the bombing of Gaza. It also has something to do with what happened with Iraq. The pro-Israel people were telling us that the Iraq war was necessary for American national security, that Saddam Hussein was a massive threat, that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. The whole thing was a lie. The pro-Israel lobbyists, people like Richard Pearl and Paul Wolfowitz and the like, the whole PNAC, the whole Project for the New American Century lobby, they were working and they were pushing for this Iraqi fraudster to be the new leader of Iraq. His name was Ahmed Chalabi. Ahmed Chalabi was a fraudster. He was wanted by the Jordanian government for robbing the Petra Bank in Jordan. And then all of a sudden he became this major source for the pro-Israel lobby before the Iraq war to prove that Iraq was this massive threat to the United States. And the Americans bought it. And then they realized, oh my God, after 1 million Iraqis were killed, after thousands of American troops were killed, after trillions of dollars were lost, after a massive defeat in Iraq for the U.S. government and for the U.S. military and for the U.S. empire, the Americans realized, oh my God, we were lied to, we were screwed over, and we paid in blood for this mistake, for believing a lie. And they're saying it's these pro-Israel people who lied to us. It's the Zionists who lied to us. It's Israel who lied to us. And so this is one of the massive reasons, one of the biggest reasons as to why people are pissed off at Israel. And so that is why people like Tucker Carlson are so famous. So what's going to happen? Israel continues to screw itself over. Bottom line. And for years to come, people who are critical of Israel are going to be saying, even a pro-Israel president, even a president as pro-Israel as Donald frickin' Trump, admitted that Israel violated a ceasefire. Because before, it was always, oh, Hamas violated it. Oh, the Muslims violated it. Oh, this other faction violated it. Israel could do no wrong. And what happened? I mean, there was a ceasefire agreement that was brokered by the Trump administration, specifically by people like Steve Witkoff, between Hamas and Israel. Hamas did release hostages in the first phase of the agreement. And then Hamas said, okay, let's go into the second phase of the agreement. Let's go into the second phase of the ceasefire. And what happens? Israel bombs Gaza, kills a whole bunch of people, and Israel broke the ceasefire. And the whole world blatantly clearly saw Israel breaking a ceasefire. And I did a video saying, look, Israel broke a ceasefire. Holy shit. And guess what happened? We were getting gaslit the entire time, and Israel was saying, oh no, Hamas did it. No, Israel broke the ceasefire. And the American president, Donald Trump, didn't say this. He didn't admit to this. But now we see the president of the United States. And this is not Obama. This is not a critical of Israel president. This is not a president who is critical of Israel. This is freaking Donald Trump, a very pro-Israel president who has a long history of being pro-Israel. This is the guy who made the capital of Israel into Jerusalem. This is the guy who appointed Mike freaking Huckabee to be the U.S. ambassador to Israel. This is not someone who's critical of Israel. And even a president as pro-Israel as Donald freaking Trump has admitted that Israel has broke a ceasefire. This has set a precedent that will be used for years. People like Bassem Youssef, Dave Smith, and the like, they're going to be using this. Norman Finkelstein. They're going to be using this. And people are going to say, wait a second. They're not listening to our president. Our president told them to honor a ceasefire. They don't want to listen to our president. They're being defiant toward America. Why in the hell are we supporting these people? And this voice that is rising against Israel in America, in the Western world, is going to get so big, it's eventually going to be reflected in American foreign policy towards Israel. And the Western world is going to abandon Israel. That's what's going to happen. Eventually, the Tuckerites are going to dominate American society so much. They're going to dominate the metapolitical discourse so much that you are going to be seeing America eventually throwing Israel under the bus. And Israel continues to throw its own self under the bus. By pushing for the war in Iraq, it enabled the rise of Iran. And then in the war against Iran, it pushed for the toppling of Bashar al-Assad, which has led to the rise of Turkey. And now Turkey is accelerating its ballistic missile production. Why? Because Turkey is preparing for a war with Israel. Turkey is pissed off at the Israelis. Now, the Israelis showed their arrogance yet again by invading Syria, going into southern Syria, deploying troops there, and then telling the freaking Turks, the second most armed country in NATO, that they cannot use the air bases in Syria. Now, Trump has not been critical of Turkey. Trump praised Turkey. Why? Because Turkey is a very important geostrategic member of NATO. It is the second most armed country in NATO. And there's Israel being arrogant, saying, oh, Turkey, you can't use the air bases in Syria. And Turkey's like, why not? Oh, because we say so. And Turkey's like, F you. And what does Israel do? Israel bombs the freaking runaway, the freaking airstrip on the T4 airbase in Syria, an airbase that Turkey has claimed for itself. They're pissing off the Turks. And they don't care. They don't care about the fact that Turkey is the second most armed country in NATO. They don't care about the fact that Turkey is an extremely geostrategically important member of NATO. They don't care about the fact that the Americans are very, very pro-Turkey. They don't care, because in their minds, America is always going to be on our side. Well, and I've talked about this before, America will choose Turkey over Israel. How do I know this? It's something called the Dardanelles. I've said this a million times, and I'm going to keep saying this. Turkey controls the access way from the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. NATO wants that control. The American empire wants that control. It does not want to give up Turkey. Even if it means losing Israel, it does not want to give up Turkey, because America always wants to have that option of blocking the Russians from having free access from the Black Sea into the Mediterranean. So America does not want to lose Turkey. So here you have, oh my God, freaking, and then Donald Trump praises Turkey for taking over Syria.
I said it. I said, congratulations. You've done what nobody's been able to do in 2,000 years. You've taken over Syria with different names, but same thing. I said, you've taken it over. He's taken it over through surrogates. He goes, no, it was not me. I said, it was you. But that's okay. You don't have to say, well, sort of maybe it was me. Okay. But what he did, he's a tough guy, and he's very smart.
The American empire wants Turkey to take over Syria because the American empire is tired of policing the world, and they say, okay, give it to the Turks. Let them handle Syria. And this is really a sign of America's lack of morale and policing the world and all that. So we're seeing the rise of the Turkish Empire, and the Israelis, they want to revive the Jewish Empire. They want to create greater Israel. They want to control their neighbors. They want to be the top dog. Well, guess what? You have a dog that is bigger than Israel, and that is Turkey. Now, Israel does have nukes. Turkey has nukes, but they're American nukes. But Turkey, I think, will eventually become an officially nuclear-armed nation. And that's going to be very, very ugly. And Turkey is on its way to producing a very powerful air force. They are on their way. They are currently engineering and creating their own fifth-generation fighter jet known as the Khan fighter jet. And so Israel has an advantage over Turkey, and that is with the Israeli Air Force. But once Turkey establishes its own advanced, indigenously created Air Force, Turkey will be either on par with Israel or more effective than Israel in the battlefield. Turkey will be more dangerous than Israel. But Israel doesn't care, because in Israel's mind, hey, America's always going to have our backs no matter what. Well, guess what? The Tuckerites are taking over, and they don't like Israel. So you've pissed off the Americans in the worst possible time. Why? Because of your arrogance, Israel. Because of your arrogance. And no one believes you anymore, Israel. Nobody believes you. It's like what the Egyptian comedian Bassam Youssef said on the Piers Morgan show. He was having a debate with an Israeli hospitalist by the name of Jonathan. And Mr. Bassam Youssef told this Israeli hospitalist, nobody believes you. Nobody believes you. No matter what Israel says, no one believes you. No one believes you, Israel.
How many times Israel killed journalists? And then it's like, it didn't happen. It wasn't us. No, it was us. But it's an accident.
Let's talk about journalists, Bassam. Yeah, let's talk about journalists, by all means.
Don't interrupt me. Basha, don't interrupt me. Halas? Like, it's not us.
Let's talk about journalists, indeed, about Hamas.
Let's talk about journalists. Shut up. I didn't interrupt you. Shut the fuck up. Israel. Nobody believes you. Nobody likes you. No matter how much media covers for you, no matter how much politicians you buy to parrot your talking points, no matter how many fake influencers you hire to whitewash your face, no matter how many fake Indian-based accounts that tweet for you, no matter how many European models you bring in and you pay them so they can dance with the IDF uniform, right? That everybody can see you, everybody can smell your bullshit, right? You are like the neighbor who firebombs everybody's house, and he's sad why he's not invited to a house party, right? You will win in the battlefield. You will get more land because America supports you. It's like supporting a rabid dog that shits on your lawns and eats your cats and bites everybody, and it's like, oh, he's just like having a bad day. You will win, maybe, on the battlefield, but everybody knows who you are. A bunch of heartless, psychopathic, demonic assholes. And okay. I don't have anything to say.
And that's true. That is true, because Israel pushed lies about Iraq, and now people are saying, wait a second, this is a boy who cried wolf type situation. And eventually the real wolf is going to rise up, and that is the Turkish wolf. And the Turks are not going to be nice. The Turks are not going to be as nice as the Iranians. We have seen the viciousness of the Turk, and it is ugly. We have read about the Armenian genocide. We saw what the Azeri Turks did to the Armenians in 2020. Beheadings, mass executions. It was very ugly. And I don't like this. I don't want to see Israel being devastated in war. I don't want to see Israel being destroyed. I don't like seeing Israel getting bombed. I don't. I really don't. I saw the story today that broke my heart. An Israeli Holocaust survivor was killed in the Iranian bombardment. I mean, it's sad. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see suffering. I don't want to see Israel getting bombed. But this is just strictly my observation. Because of Israel's arrogance, Israel has paved the path and continues to pave the path towards its own demise. And we're seeing it in real time. We are seeing the deterioration of American-Israeli relations in real time. We're seeing it happening. And I'm pretty certain that Donald Trump is going to be nice to the Israelis, and et cetera, et cetera. But I don't think Donald Trump is just going to completely turn his back on Israel. But what I am saying is that that big F-bomb is bigger than the freaking bunker busters that Trump dropped on Iran. That's what I'm saying. Yes, the big bunker dumpers, bunker busters are big and explosive and scary, and they're loud. But Trump dropping the F-bomb on Israel, this is bigger. Why do I say that? Because this has geopolitical ramifications. And how is that so? Because it has metapolitical ramifications. Metapolitical meaning the world of ideas, right? The world of ideas. You have the political space, which is politicians running for office, campaigning, etc. And then you have the metapolitical space. This is what eventually affects the political space. The metapolitical space is the place where people express their ideas. And the dominating idea in the metapolitical world will eventually dominate the political world. So it starts from the metapolitical, and then it goes into the political world. And in the metapolitical space, the criticism of Israel is dominating. And that eventually is going to have ramifications in the political world. Israel is screwing itself over because of its arrogance. And I'm sad to say this. Israel is like Judas. Judas thought, if I betray Christ, I will enrich myself with my silver. And he eventually destroyed himself. Israel is like Haman. He thought, well, I'll kill all the Jews and I'll kill Mordecai. And I'll even make a noose for Mordecai. And he himself ended up hanging from his very noose. The very noose that he set up for Mordecai, he hung from himself. Israel is leading itself into its own demise. I don't like this. I really wish that cooler heads in Israel would prevail. I really wish that the moderates would prevail over the fanatics. But sadly enough, this is not going to be the case. It's not, because the fanatics in Israel are dominating the political discourse in the Jewish state, in Israeli society. You have people like Ben Gvir, people like Netanyahu, people like Smotrich. These are fanatics. Definitely Ben Gvir and Smotrich are bigger fanatics than Netanyahu. And these are people who want a third temple. Not Netanyahu. He doesn't want a third temple. He's not that crazy. But you have Smotrich and Ben Gvir demanding for a third temple. Why? Why do they want a third temple? Well, what happened the last time Israel had a temple? There was a civil war. There was the Roman Jewish revolt, and then you had a civil war in the midst of that revolt. And the Jews butchered each other. They destroyed each other. And history doesn't exactly repeat, but it sure as hell rhymes. And what do we see in Israel, besides Israel pushing for policies that will lead to its own demise, and that are leading to its own demise? We see Israel being extremely politically divided. There is an Arab Israeli politician. His last name is Odeh, I believe. And there was an Israeli politician who told this Arab Israeli politician that he deserves a firing squad. This is a sign of coming political instability in Israel, and really, I'm going to use the big C word, civil war in Israel. There was a civil war in Judea during the Roman Jewish War, and I think the same thing will happen. So Israel will destroy itself, not only because of the policies that it has pushed and continues to push, but also it will destroy itself from within. And you have the moderates in Israel who don't want a third temple. They don't want to see genocide against Arabs. And they are more moderate. They have more cooler heads. And then you have the fanatics in Israel. And their dream is to establish a Jewish supremacist state. The thing is that the moderates in Israel are the biggest hindrance to this aspiration. And so the fanatics eventually are going to say, okay, America is not on our side. No one is on our side. What was the point of being moderate? What was the point of following the rules? What was the point of being compliant? What was the point of following rules of engagement? Now is the time to establish our utopia. And they're going to try, like the French revolutionaries in the late 18th century, they are going to try to make their utopia into a reality, and they will use bloodshed. And Israel will destroy itself from within. The future is going to be surreal, because we are going to be seeing history replay before our eyes, rhyme before our eyes. The future is going to be very dark. And it saddens me to say this. I don't say this with glee. It saddens me to say this. I don't want to see this happen. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.